Here's a number that surprises most people the first time they hear it. A single fruit fly can go from egg to a fully reproducing adult in about a week under warm kitchen conditions, and a female can lay several hundred eggs in her short lifetime. Do the arithmetic on that, and the 2 or 3 fruit flies you notice circling your fruit bowl on Monday can plausibly be the ancestors of a genuine cloud of them by the following weekend, which is exactly the pattern most people experience, and exactly why it feels like fruit flies appeared out of nowhere overnight. They didn't appear out of nowhere. You had a breeding population working quietly in your kitchen for days before it became visible enough to notice. I want to open with that number because it changes how you should think about the entire problem. This isn't a video about killing the flies you can see today, though I'll show you how to do that fast, using nothing that you don't already have in the kitchen. It's about understanding 2 genuinely different insects that most people lump together as flies, each drawn to your house by a different chemical signal, each requiring a different trap, and each one, done correctly, actually solvable within a day, rather than being a battle you fight every summer with a can of spray. My community deals with flies constantly, given how much time we spend around livestock and a working kitchen without the sealed, climate-controlled advantages a lot of modern homes take for granted. And over the years, I've landed on a small set of methods that work fast, cost close to nothing, and don't require a trip to a store for a purpose-built trap. Today, I'll walk you through both problems, how a fruit fly actually finds your kitchen, and why the classic vinegar trap works on real chemistry, where fruit flies are actually breeding, which is almost never where people first assume, the genuinely different biology of a housefly, an old mechanical trapping method older than any chemical device, an honest look at a popular folk remedy with thinner evidence than its popularity suggests, and the sanitation fixes that keep either species from coming back. Let's start with the fly you're most likely dealing with right now if you're watching this in summer. Before any specific trap, I want to draw a clear line between 2 insects that get talked about as the same problem, because treating them the same way is the single biggest reason people struggle with one or both. Fruit flies, properly the common vinegar fly in the genus Drosophila, are tiny, often under a 1/4 inch, tan to yellowish brown, with distinctive red eyes on close inspection. They're drawn overwhelmingly to the smell of fermentation, which is why they show up around overripe produce, empty wine glasses, sticky recycling, and drains where organic matter has had time to decompose. Houseflies, genus Musca, are noticeably different, larger, dull gray with 4 dark stripes just behind the head, drawn to general organic decay, particularly protein-based decay. Garbage, pet waste, and on a working farm, manure. They don't share the fruit fly's specific pull toward fermenting sugar, which is exactly why a bowl of vinegar that clears a fruit fly problem overnight does essentially nothing against a housefly problem. Using the wrong tool against the wrong insect is the single most common reason people try one of these methods, get no result, and conclude the whole approach doesn't work. So look closely at what's actually bothering you before doing anything else. Small, tan, red-eyed, clustering around fruit, or a drain. That's a fruit fly, and the first half of this video applies. Larger, gray, striped, found near garbage rather than fruit. That's a housefly, and you'd want the second half instead. A fruit fly's sense of smell is built specifically around detecting fermentation byproducts, compounds like ethanol and acetic acid, produced when yeast and bacteria break down sugars in overripe fruit or spilled juice. Their antennae carry chemical receptors tuned exactly to these compounds, sensitive enough to detect a fermenting food source from an impressive distance for an insect this size. Which is why a single overripe banana can pull in fruit flies from outside a home that had none the day before. This explains something that confuses people. Fruit flies aren't attracted to fresh fruit itself. A perfectly ripe apple on your counter isn't emitting fermentation compounds. It's specifically the overripe or damaged produce, where yeast and bacteria have already begun working, that's actually broadcasting the signal. This is also exactly why the vinegar trap works so well. Apple cider vinegar is itself a fermented product. Carrying many of the same volatile compounds a fruit fly's antennae are tuned to detect, strong enough to outcompete whatever's actually attracting them elsewhere in your kitchen. This is the technique behind the "gone in a day" part of this video's title, and there's a wrong way to build it that genuinely underperforms. The cloudier, less filtered kind if you have a choice. Since the visible sediment carries additional fermentation byproducts that strengthen the scent signal, add a few drops of ordinary dish soap and stir gently. That soap is doing real specific work. Liquids have surface tension, a thin, cohesive skin strong enough that small insects can stand on top without breaking through. Dish soap is a surfactant that disrupts this tension, so a fly landing on soapy vinegar breaks straight through rather than standing on it and drowns before she can lift back off. Skip the soap, and a meaningful number of flies simply land, drink, and fly away. The second piece is the cover, and this is where homemade versions often fall short. Stretch plastic wrap tightly over the container, secure it with a rubber band, and poke several small holes with a toothpick, just barely large enough for a fly to squeeze through. This creates something close to a one-way funnel. The scent escapes easily enough through those small holes to draw flies in from across the room. And a fly actively flying toward that scent can generally find her way in. But once inside and disoriented with no directional scent trail leading her back out, finding that same small hole again is considerably harder. Covered traps consistently outperform an open bowl, sometimes dramatically. Set 2 or 3 around the areas of actual activity, near the fruit bowl, near the sink, and you'll typically see a substantial reduction in visible adults within hours, often clearing most of an active population within a single day. A quick variant, a small amount of red wine, left slightly open to oxidize for a day, works through the same principle, and some find it even more effective, likely because its specific fermentation compound blend can be a stronger match to what's actually drawing flies in a given kitchen. Trapping today's adults handles what you can see, but if you don't address the actual breeding source, you'll be trapping a fresh wave again within a week, since eggs and larvae already present will keep completing their cycle regardless. Check the obvious sources first. Overripe fruit, a softening bag of onions, a sticky spot in the recycling. But the source that surprises almost everyone, worth checking even after clearing every piece of produce in the house, is your drain. Kitchen sink drains accumulate a slow buildup of organic material along the inside pipe walls, soap residue, food particles, general grime, exactly the kind of decomposing material a fruit fly can breed in, completely out of sight, for weeks. A reliable way to test this, sometimes called the tape test. Cover the drain opening completely with a strip of clear tape, sticky side down, and leave it overnight. If flies are breeding in that drain, you'll typically find several stuck to the underside by morning, having emerged and flown straight up into the barrier. If you find flies, the drain needs an actual cleaning, a stiff bottle brush worked down to physically disturb the buildup, followed by boiling water, or a baking soda and vinegar mixture left to sit and fizz for several minutes before a hot flush, both of which break down residue a simple rinse leaves untouched. Houseflies are drawn to decaying organic matter broadly, with a particular pull toward protein-based decay, garbage, pet waste, and on any property, with livestock, manure, in a way fermenting fruit simply doesn't register for them. 2 behaviors worth knowing. Beyond the practical question of getting rid of them, a housefly tastes with receptors on her feet, sampling the chemical makeup of nearly every surface she lands on before deciding whether to feed, which is part of why they land so persistently and repeatedly. And because she can't chew solid food, she vomits digestive enzymes directly onto whatever she's landed on, liquefying it externally before drawing the liquid back up, meaning every surface a housefly has fed on has fly saliva and whatever bacteria was on her feet deposited on it, frequently including garbage. This is the actual mechanism behind house flies being a genuine disease transmission concern, not just an unpleasant presence. The stable fly closely resembles a housefly at a glance, but bites, feeding on blood rather than liquefied solid, and is often the actual culprit behind an unexplained biting problem blamed on houseflies, which famously don't bite at all. If something that looks like a housefly is biting you, you're likely dealing with stable flies instead. A genuinely common point of confusion. This predates any electric or chemical fly device by well over a century and remains effective because it works on pure mechanics, nothing to run out of or stop being effective over time. Combine equal parts sugar and corn syrup or honey in a small saucepan, heat gently until fully combined into a thick syrup, and let it cool slightly before brushing it generously onto strips of brown paper or heavy cardstock, roughly an inch wide. Hang the strips wherever flies are actually active, near a window, close to a kitchen doorway. The syrup serves double duty, sticky adhesive holding a fly in place once she lands, and a mild attractant scent in its own right, since sugar syrup carries some appeal even to house flies despite their primary pull being toward protein decay. This won't clear a housefly population as dramatically fast as the vinegar trap clears fruit flies, since houseflies aren't pulled toward it with the same chemical urgency, but run several strips at once combined with the sanitation work coming up, and it makes a genuine dent over a day or two, all for the cost of sugar and paper you likely already have. You've probably seen it, a clear plastic bag partially filled with water, sometimes with coins inside, hung near a doorway, supposedly keeping flies away. The most common explanations involve water refraction, distorting a fly's vision, or the reflective light resembling a spider's web, either supposedly triggering avoidance. I want to be straightforward. Neither explanation has strong, controlled scientific support behind it. The technique is genuinely old and widely practiced, and plenty of people report it working for them, but the entomological research testing it has generally found effects that are weak, inconsistent, and hard to distinguish from coincidence, rather than a clearly demonstrated deterrent. I'm not telling you never to try it, it costs nothing and does no harm, but I'd rather you put your real confidence into the vinegar trap, the drain check, the flypaper, and the sanitation work, all of which have an understood mechanism behind them, rather than leaning primarily on a technique whose evidence is this thin. Both insects need a way in, a door held ajar, a torn window screen, a gap around an exterior door frame are the common routes. Check every screen for tears or spots where age has let the mesh sag loose, replace a worn door sweep if daylight shows underneath a closed door, and be more deliberate about how long a door sits propped open, especially while your kitchen may be actively broadcasting an attractive scent from whatever is sitting out. But the genuinely permanent fix, the part that keeps either species from becoming a recurring problem, comes down to removing what's attracting and breeding them in the first place. For fruit flies, being honestly disciplined about produce crossing from ripe into overripe, use it, refrigerate it, or discard it before it becomes a breeding site, keeping recycling genuinely rinsed rather than just emptied, and making that drain flush from part 4 a routine habit every few weeks through warm months rather than a one-time fix. For houseflies, sanitation is even more directly the whole solution, since their pull is built around decay and waste rather than a ripeness window. Garbage taken out regularly, a trash can with a genuinely tight lid, prompt pet waste cleanup, and on a property with livestock, regular manure removal, and proper composting rather than large undisturbed piles near a home, all directly remove what a housefly is searching for For fruit flies, apple cider vinegar or a little red wine, dish soap, and plastic wrap with small holes poked through in 2 or 3 traps near the highest activity spots. For houseflies, sugar, corn syrup, or honey and heavy paper for homemade flypaper. For both, a walkthrough of screens, door sweeps, and garbage or produce storage, plus the drain tape test if fruit flies are the issue. A few mistakes worth avoiding. Using a fruit fly trap against a housefly problem or vice versa, go back to part 1 and confirm your species first. Skipping the dish soap, which lets flies drink and fly away rather than drown. Leaving a vinegar trap uncovered, which lets the scent draw flies in but gives them an easy way back out. And trapping today's visible flies without ever checking the breeding source, which just means repeating this exercise in a week. On why the store-bought version still outsells this. A packaged trap looks purpose-built in a way a jar with plastic wrap over it doesn't, even when the mechanism inside, attractant scent, plus a one-way entry is functionally identical to what you'd build yourself. That's simply how a product marketed to solve a specific problem presents itself. There was never much incentive for that industry to volunteer that a 5-minute version exists using vinegar and soap already in your kitchen. A commercial fruit fly trap commonly runs $5 to $15, often needing replacement every couple of weeks through an active season, against a homemade version that costs a small amount of vinegar and soap you are already own, refreshed as needed. A full season handling both fly types this way runs close to nothing against what could otherwise be $20 or $30 or more in repeated purchases. Here's what I'd do today if either of these is a problem in your house right now. Identify which insect you're actually dealing with using part 1. Build the matching trap from what's already in your kitchen, and if it's fruit flies, run the drain tape test overnight regardless of whether you've spotted an obvious source elsewhere, since that's the one almost everyone misses on the first pass. Tell me in the comments which one you're dealing with and how quickly the trap actually cleared it.